Okay, Oklahoma. Quick follow-up. I posted a lot of science in my last video about masks, and that was science we have, right? Those were studies published in peer-reviewed journals. They were studies that had confirmed outcomes. But let's talk about what we don't know, the science that we don't know, okay? Such as, are masks a source of enhanced transmission? If anybody out there in the medical community knows of an article published in a peer-reviewed scientific journal that can shed any light on the questions I'm about to ask, please, please, please post a comment or a link to that video or a link to that study, okay? But make sure that it has controlled clinical trials and confirmed outcomes. What has to happen is you have to test everyone, make sure everyone's clean, and then have a double-blind study where people don't even necessarily know that their mask use is what's being studied, right? I mean, this is what you would have to establish any of the things I'm about to look at here, right? The first one being, could we actually get sicker by wearing masks than if we didn't? Is that crazy that no one really knows that in a truly stated scientific way? Okay, what about masks as collectors of pathogens? Meaning that the mask could potentially gather a pathogen that normally would not become present in the human body had that mask not been worn. We're not necessarily talking about transmission of disease here, right? We're just talking about any pathogen. Are there any studies about this? No. Okay, now let's talk about aerosolization. If a giant droplet with COVID in it flies out of my mouth with a cough and then hits your mask, right? And then you start to breathe, can the fibers of that mask aerosolize that droplet and allow the virons to penetrate into your respiratory system? I'm not sure. Is anyone sure? Does anybody have any science that can even shed light on this? It's not out there. How about bacterial growth on masks? You just put that same mask on, you throw it in your center console of your car, you throw it on the shelf or next to your bed or whatever. What's growing on that mask? What other things besides COVID do we need to be worried about? Okay. How about dust and aerosols? How do those pathogen-laden droplets interact? Nobody knows. How about long-term effects? Those things are all short-term effects, right? Just going out in a single session and getting exposed to something and possibly having it be worse. But what about long-term effects? Is there any science, any peer-reviewed literature about long-term effects of either face coverings or respirators? Are these governors and mayors just going to say, hey, we're not going to look at the science, we're not going to look at anything other than what feels good, even if it has no scientific basis for doing it, and it could potentially harm the people we're telling to do it? Because we have no idea. These questions are unanswered in our society right now. Not to mention just general psychological problems, such as what is a masked society going to look like? Now identity is going to be much harder. It's going to be, people are going to be more individualized. Maybe they're not going to feel as much of a community. Who knows? Psychological consequences. Is there going to be a rise in depression strictly based on mask wearing? Anxiety strictly based on mask wearing? I know we've just wanted to produce as many masks as we can with our global economy, but is there environmental impacts to the global economy, to the global environment in any way, shape, or form because of all this demand for masks? If we just go by the science and say that nobody needs to wear masks at all, except maybe a very slim portion of the society that doesn't really have any other choice, maybe, or maybe it is just a placebo effect, for them. Uh, and then, of course, the very last thing I want to talk about is these masks themselves, the fibers they're made with. They're paper products. Where is the paper sourced from? And so if I walk around and I just cough out into that mask and stir up the fibers of that mask, right? And then I just breathe normally in that mask. Do the fibers or any other potential secondary chemical or other potential contaminant come off the mask? Am I breathing it in? Do those things, are we going to have a massive cancer spike in lung cancer 5 to 10 years from now? And is it going to be traced back to these masks? Who knows? Because nobody's got any scientific literature about it. All they have is feelings. Feels good to wear a mask, then you wear the mask. Okay, well, that's fine. I agree. If in a liberal society, everyone should be able to do what feels good for themselves personally. But the minute you start using police power to mandate the use of a mask when there's no scientific basis, A, for the use of the mask, and B, there's no scientific evidence or study for what the potential harms of those masks could be, then you're setting yourself up for a disaster. Also remember, U.S. Weekly, all death. This is their pandemic. Remember, this was 2 years ago. This was COVID, right? And we're actually way under the average deaths. Tons more people are alive now because of the lockdowns than should have been as an average. So let's not forget that part. So, number one, even if we feel that there is a need for protection against COVID, some sort of enhanced measures that we normally have never taken before, masks will not do anything. This is science, okay? So I'm not a left winger or a right winger. I try to stay out of politics, but when my mayor says in a factual tone, masks are necessary, you must wear a mask to protect yourself, everyone should be wearing masks in public, this is a scientific fraud, period. I have 2 decades worth of scientific studies to disprove his statement. So it's time for the citizens of Oklahoma to start just telling the truth. I don't care if you're a left winger, a right winger, center, top, bottom, what you are. If you have a truth, it needs to get out, and that's what this channel is about. So that's the truth of what we don't know, a follow-up to what the science we do know.